week I had a moment free. That doesn't happen to me very often. And when it did, I took the liberty of reading Forbes magazine. It's something that I used to do when I worked in corporate business, but I don't really find time for very often anymore. And I found an article called, "How Much Money is Enough?" I like the title. And the economist and author John Wasik says that step number one to answering this question is to ask yourself another question. At what point are your needs met? Now, John is talking about how much you need to pay your basic bills, your education, and your retirement. But as I read his perspective, I wondered at what point we as Christians are having our needs met. How long do we keep doing things our way? And when do we finally give up, give in, and let God use us and bless us? I think it all comes down to what we believe and what we trust. And the Latin word for I believe and I trust is credo. Now that's the same root word of the word credit, which kind of made me grin a bit because I think that creditors were originally family-owned businesses, grocery stores, that trusted poor farmers would pay off their bills for food and for equipment once the harvest came in. It was a good faith credit, a belief and a trust. But if you look around today, it seems like credit card companies are believing that we all want to live beyond our means, and they trust that we will not be able to pay off our debts in time. And so they get richer and richer as we sink deeper and deeper into financial crisis. But today is a new beginning, a chance to examine our beliefs and find faith in the midst of crisis, financial or otherwise. Today we begin an exciting 5-week series taken from this book called Enough, Discovering Joy Through Simplicity and Generosity. It was written by Reverend Adam Hamilton, who founded the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas in 1990. Have any of you ever been there or heard of it? The Church of the Resurrection? Well, in the last 25 years, Reverend Hamilton has grown this to become the largest church in our entire United Methodist denomination. They have over 20,000 children, youth, and adult members. And each Sunday, each weekend, they worship an average of 10,000 people in this campus in Leawood, Kansas. Now, Reverend Hamilton's dream was to create a congregation where thinking people, non-religious and nominally religious people alike, would come together and grow into committed followers of Jesus Christ. And he published 22 books and has spoken publicly in 40 states. So if you want to picture this guy, I don't know if you can see him on the back there, it's a small picture. He's kind of like the rock star of United Methodist pastors, if you're into that whole megachurch thing, okay? But I've never met Adam personally, and I've never preached any of his series, but when I picked up this book, Enough, I knew that there was some wisdom, some deep wisdom within it that I think that we all need to hear, and I include myself when I say we all. Wisdom about simplifying our rather complex, technological, and often isolating lives. Messages about the importance of cultivating generosity in order to embody God's abundant love and grace to the world. Questions about how much is enough in this capitalistic, take-all-you-can society of ours. And finally, wisdom about what to do with our stress and anxiety when life is tough or troubling. This first sermon focuses on finding our faith in the midst of financial crisis, and Hamilton begins by quoting the first inaugural address of President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933, when our country was in the grip of the Great Depression. Roosevelt spoke these words, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. In every dark hour of our national life, a leadership of frankness and vigor has met with the understanding and support of the people themselves, which is essential to victory." I find his words just as relevant today, 82 years after he spoke them, in light of our current national state of being. Many of us are paralyzed with fears, and some of you have talked with me about those in the past few weeks, fears of mass shooting, of increased violence and drugs in our society, of recent floods and fires and natural disasters, of immigration and the global refugee crisis, of religions, which we know little about, and if you believe what you hear on Fox News, whose followers are all out to try and kill us. It's a scary place out there. And just yesterday, a friend asked me about a comparison she had heard between the present U.S. tendency to see ourselves as number one on top of the world and the similarities to the time before the fall of Nazi Germany or the great empires of Greece and Rome. Yes, greatness often yields hubris. And once the ego takes over, it seems that a big, humbling crash is never very far behind. Our financial markets work that way. Ballooning upwards, crashing downwards. Even our emotions sometimes seem to follow that pattern. There is light at the end of every dark tunnel, but there is also ruin and brokenness in the midst of any great success. And so Hamilton's study includes a stock market analysis from 1941 to the present. And he points out, correctly I might add, as an economist, because often people get it wrong when they start to look at the economy, Hamilton points out that the valid question is never if the market will recover, but when. Because in the past 74 years, each significant market drop has been followed within a few years by a significant market rise. Unknowingly, it seems, the U.S. stock market is enforcing what we read in Ecclesiastes 3. For everything, there is a season. However, during market crashes and downturns, people suffer. We can't deny that. Some people must sell their homes or their cars, their trucks or their boats. Some are unemployed or lose their health insurance. Others wind up on the streets, self-medicating their depressions and their mental illness. Suicide increases, as does violent crime, since desperation forces people to spiral downwards, further and further away from hope. And even those who are well off, who marginally notice the downturn, often perceive an increase in their anxiety levels. They don't sleep as well at night. They hold more closely to what really matters to them. Sometimes they stay up worrying about their image or their reputation. And some even turn to reading self-help books. And that is what brought me to today's passage from the Gospel of Mark. Don't run from suffering. Embrace it. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to saving yourself, your true self. As I read this, it begs the question, who is our true self? And what do we really need to have our needs met? The Bible says we can only win by losing, and we can only find joy through giving up our control and letting God lead. We cannot outrun suffering, and we cannot avoid pain in this life. We were created as children of the light and children of the darkness. And the more we fear the dark, the more we are actually fearing fear itself. And the more that frozen fear stops us from creating the future that God has already planned and laid out for us. Today's text in Mark comes right after Jesus feeds 4,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, and right after he heals a blind man, blind from birth. And still, his closest friends and his followers don't seem to get it. They don't seem to understand who he is, and so he says it as plain as day. Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. I wonder what that would look like and what that would feel like, letting God drive my life. Would I make fewer wrong turns? Or would I be quicker perhaps to notice the beauty in any route on which I find myself? Would I stop striving for perfection and being so hard on myself when I fall short? Would I still be in such a hurry all the time? Or would I perhaps eliminate some of the complexity in my schedule, in my understanding of my identity, and in my relationships with others? Would I spend more time with my kids, grandkids, family, and friends? Would I be more generous with my time, my talents, my energy, and my money? Would I loosen my white-knuckled grip on the control that I have in my life and open my hands, knowing that the more I give, the more I am open to receive God's blessings, which are already planned and spilling out abundantly on me? Would I laugh more? That would be nice, wouldn't it? When's the last time you had a really good belly-aching laugh? And I wonder if I could find a deeper foundation of faith, a deeper purpose in life, a deeper reason for being. It's an exciting and scary prospect for me to grow what little shred of faith that I've been given into even a mustard seed-sized speck. But if we read Matthew 17:20, we know that God assures us that even a speck of faith, as tiny as a mustard seed, can move mountains. And I don't know about you, but there are plenty of mountains out there that I would like to move these days. I'd like to discover more joy and determine how much is enough for me and of me, and how much more of me needs to be transformed into God stuff. I'd like to enjoy life's view from the passenger seat. I remember as a child sitting with my arm up on the windowsill and the wind whipping my hair wildly and my arm dancing outside of the window. Do you all remember that? Do you still do it sometimes? It brings you such joy to be in the passenger seat. And I wish I could ignore Chicken Little and all those other people in my lives who are trying to work me up into a tizzy. And I wish I could just stick with what I know and who I am, a beloved child of God. In the midst of crisis, emotional, financial, physical, or otherwise, I'd like to lose everything that holds me down and keeps me back. And I'd like to gain myself, my soul, some amount of faith or certainty, and ultimately peace. Isn't that the goal for so many of us? And I know it's possible. I know that transformation is possible. I did it once when my life and my marriage and my health and my career fell apart when I lived in Germany. And through God's grace, I was resurrected here in Colorado. And I was given another chance at family and at health and even at this new profession. But I have to keep reminding myself every day to die to myself, to loosen that white-knuckled grip of life's steering wheel, and to scooch over and let Jesus Christ get in the driver's seat. And I wonder if you can imagine what your response would be if he came up to you today and threw open the passenger door of your life and spoke these words to you. Hey, beloved, want to ride? Amen.